Welcome to Let's Dig Deeper, a podcast devoted to exploring life through the lens of shadow work. I'm your host, Steph Flores, and together we'll journey beneath the surface into the parts of ourselves we often avoid and the truths that shape how we lead, live, and connect. This is a space for raw reflection, radical honesty, and the kind of conversations that invite transformation. So take a deep breath, get present, and let's dig deeper. A few years ago, I discovered shadow work. Probably back in 2023 is really when I started exploring the hidden, unspoken, neglected parts of myself. And one of those parts I want to share with you that I feel I've neglected the most is time with myself. It's being alone, sitting in the quiet, allowing myself to really feel what I'm feeling, to allow my body to process the things and the emotions that I was going through at the time. And that isn't always easy. I know one of the challenges that my therapist gave me was to go on a date by myself, to start dating myself. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what dating yourself looked like. And I remember trying it. And right before I went on my date, I was in the parking lot and I had a panic attack, an anxiety attack in my car because I was about to drive to a bar and have a drink by myself and sit by myself amongst a group of people. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how that would. And I remember sitting in my car and feeling this overwhelm. And I remember calling my friend and letting her know what I was going through. And in that moment, after we had spoken, I took 5 minutes and I meditated. I did some breath work and that calmed me down. Now that same night, my closest friends were all getting together just for like a dinner, movie night, game night at the house. So I really had to make that decision of, am I going to commit to dating myself, being alone and allowing myself to feel whatever it was that I was going to walk into, right? Or would I allow myself to sit in company and just engage in conversation and fun and laughter and neglect myself? So often, almost probably my entire life, I always surrounded myself with people. And I don't think it was because I wanted to escape anything. I think I just felt more comfortable in a crowd, in conversation with people. So to do anything other than that, to pick myself, that was new to me. So I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what people were going to think of me, which is crazy because I'm not the type of person that really necessarily cares what people think. But it was such a vulnerable place for me, I think. So I get to the place and I park my car and I'm pretty sure I called one more person to just walk with me as I got to the bar. And I ordered a drink and I made conversation with the bartender and I sat down, and just like I expected, there were a lot of people there, all in groups, having a good time, and I sat there by myself. And again, the challenge that my therapist had given me was to just allow myself to feel, to sit alone, to just be present with myself. So part of that was also not scrolling on social media and even virtually taking part in what everybody else was doing. It was truly being present in the moment with myself. And I did it. I was probably out for maybe 2 hours, and it was a great time. I took some pictures in the bathroom by myself because they had a really cool mural on the wall. And those moments that I experienced just that night was eye-opening. They were moments that I will never forget, especially that being the first one. And I think that created just confidence in me to go to a restaurant and be good with being by myself. It allowed me the confidence to enjoy being alone. So to give you some more backstory, I got the tattoo on my arm that says, I am enough. First tattoo, it's nice and big on my arm because that was the running thought in my head. Not in 2023. That's been a running thought in my head since I was a kid, right? So when we talk about shadows and dealing with and exploring those parts of yourself that you neglect and that I neglected, I really had to dig deep to determine why I didn't feel like I was enough. So I asked myself, am I enough without the things that I have, without the achievements? Am I good enough if I brought nothing to the table except myself? Am I enough in that? So there was a lot of internal dialogue my entire life where I suppressed a part of myself who didn't feel like I was enough. And I remember writing in my journal when doing my own shadow work, asking that question. And the question was, what parts of myself have I neglected? And was time with myself? Because even to myself, I wasn't enough. I could go out into the world and the world can absolutely love me and think the greatest of thoughts about me and tell me all day long that I'm enough. But until I was able to believe it myself, right? Nothing would change if my internal dialogue was opposite of any of that. And outside of, right, accomplishments and things that I've achieved, it was tapping into that part of me, that little girl who would love playing the piano and writing songs and drawing when she couldn't sleep at night. The little girl that was terrified of the dark. I hated being in the dark. So what I would do is I would either pray or read or sing songs, but there was this creative side of me that loved to write and I create music. And sadly, that little girl never thought she was good enough. She never thought she'd be good enough in front of people. And in turn, really didn't feel good enough in private either. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that's one of the reasons why it was so hard for me to be alone, because I was also alone with my thoughts. I was alone with my own insecurities. I was alone with those reoccurring thoughts and conversations that I would have in my own head that were sometimes opposite of what people thought about me. My circle of friends think very highly of me and my family and my coworkers and things like that. And even as a kid, I would, I knew how to own a room, but internally, gosh, the insecurity that I felt, it's hard to put into words. And there's and I'm exposing myself with this one. Only one other person knows. So the whole world or whoever listens to this podcast is now going to know like my little secret. Anytime, even till this day, when I feel insecure in a room, my hands will be in my pocket and I'll be writing a word. I'm not going to tell you guys the word, but I'll write a word on my leg. And that is almost what I do to calm myself down. But it was that realization, right? That challenge that my therapist had given me to date myself, to be alone with myself, that brought about just a lot of those feelings. And why did I neglect myself so much so that I ran to the crowds? So what is shadow work? It's a practice that involves exploring the unconscious parts of yourself, right? So the shadow, it includes your repressed emotions, your hidden desires, maybe your unresolved trauma, the traits that you deny, or the traits you're unaware of. And there's a lot of different ways to practice shadow work. I think one of the most common ways is journaling. And it's not only just like writing, but it's answering questions. And I think that's how I do my shadow work. It's prompt myself with questions like, What triggers me and why? What do I criticize in others that might reflect something in me? So those are two examples of journaling for shadow work. Another thing that you could do is mindfulness. And that could be taking a moment and meditating, being mindful, right? Observing your emotions without judgment. It's that acknowledgement. Another thing that you could do is therapy or coaching, especially if you have that deep trauma that is unresolved. And one of my favorite things was that inner child work, and it's reconnecting with and healing past versions of yourself. So going back to that little girl, having a conversation with your 7-year-old self it's not easy. Heck, apologizing to your 7-year-old self isn't easy. So again, that tattoo of I am enough, it came with having a conversation with that little girl, that 7-year-old girl that felt that, apologizing to her and reaffirming her that she was enough. And it was healing that past version of myself so that my present self would understand and believe that I am enough. And in turn, my future self would walking in that. So that's a little bit of what shadow work is and how I've implemented it. It's a lot of just journaling. And gosh, some days you're going to have 2 pages. Other days you might have just a paragraph. And some days you might just have words on a paper that only you know what they mean based on whatever question you're answering or whatever you're going through. When it came to that prompt, my answer to it of the part of me that I neglect the most is time with self. I had to also ask myself the question of who am I living for? I was showing up for others, right? I was performing versions maybe of myself that felt acceptable. And I wasn't being fake, but I don't think I was showing up as all of me, right? The full version of me. And that's, again, I think that's what's important in starting just the maybe messy, uncomfortable, but freeing journey of choosing myself. That's when it started for me. It wasn't the aesthetic version of me. It wasn't the pleaser version of me, but the whole complicated, real me. It was all of me. So when shadow work became a part of my life, it wasn't glamorous. It was me crying at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. It was me journaling things that were hard for me to admit, was me setting boundaries and being terrified that people would leave. It looked like healing the parts of me that I had been taught to hide. And the way I grew up, just hiding things. It was what happened in our house was private and only we knew about it. And I'm not saying like go out and expose everything to the world, but it was what you deal with, what you go through, you keep to yourself. No one needs to know that. And because that's how I grew up as a kid, that's what carried over into adulthood. So when I sat with myself and did my shadow work and my journaling, it was healing the parts of me that I was taught to hide, those parts of me that I would never have a conversation about because it was something that you didn't discuss and you locked it away and you didn't bring it up again. So choosing myself and allowing myself to feel was about saying yes to my truth, even if it shook everything I thought I knew. And that meant letting go of who I thought I had to be and accepting the parts of me that still felt broken or angry or ashamed. It was giving myself permission to be human and be vulnerable. It was realizing that loving myself didn't mean I thought I was perfect. It meant that I was willing to embrace all of me. Shadow work is an act of love. It's choosing yourself. And choosing yourself is the revolution. So here is a gentle invitation. Get curious about your shadow. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? Try asking, what needs to be seen? What needs to be loved? What needs to be healed within me? The version of you who's hiding is just waiting to be held. And when you choose yourself, when you choose to accept and own all of you and love and sit in silence and be vulnerable with yourself, the world around you starts to shift too, because you're no longer begging for permission. You become the permission. So until next time, keep digging deeper. Keep choosing you.